Hello everyone, welcome to my tutorial. So I've got all the materials laid out ready to be talked about. Let's start with the yarn that I've used, and here's the label. So the yarn that I used is called Haba Respect, and it's yarn that was made in Turkey. Now at first glance you may be fooled to think that this is a cotton yarn, and it really isn't. According to the label, it's 85% acrylic and 15% polyester. And I guess that's the reason why I ended up getting such a good stretch on the body of this dress. And the stretch is important because remember, you're going to be fitting this dress on from the head going downwards. So it needs to stretch over the shoulders and stretch over the bust. And I got that from this yarn, but I will explain how to go about getting that fit right if you if you choose to go for 100% cotton yarns, which don't have as much stretch as acrylic yarns do have. Okay, so the recommended hook on the label, on this label, is a 3mm hook, and it's really tiny to read, but it does say 3mm here. And I used, you can say 1.5 skeins of yarn. So this is 100-gram skein. Each skein is 100 gram. So I used 1.5 skeins. That's 150 grams of yarn to make this body of the top for the size that I was working. Remember, for every size it would be, you'd either need more yarn or less yarn depending on how small it is or how big it is. Okay, so the hook. Okay, let me just talk more about this yarn. If you do go for cotton yarns, so you will see that as we get into the tutorial, I work a foundation round. That's the starting round to this body of the dress. You will have to work that foundation round 2 inches. That's 2 inches or 5 centimeters. Yes, 2 inches or 5 centimeters longer than I had worked it, because I worked that foundation round to the exact bust size for that size that I was making. Okay, so you may have to take the bust size and add on 2 inches. In order to work this body, the body of the top of the dress, you would need the bust measurement, and I'm providing all measurements. So it would be the bust measurements, and for the dress, the bottom part of the dress, you'd need the hip measurement, which I've also provided in the video. Okay, so the yarn, I'd say you can go for 4-ply or double knit, which is light worsted or category 3. That would work well. Any acrylics or cottons, or like I've done these recycled yarns, which I don't really know much about, but anyway, that did it for me. The hook that I'm using is a 4mm hook. You'll also need a yarn or a wool needle, a pair of scissors, a measuring tape, and then for the fabric part of this dress, you'll need fabric. Now, to be honest, all I did at the fabric store was ask for fabrics that are suitable for dresses, and this is what I got. And the label on this roll of fabric, all it said was dress fabric, and it worked. So this fabric, as you can see, it's not sheer, it's not see-through, it's not flimsy. It's flowy, it's soft, it doesn't have much of a stretch. It's got a tiny stretch, but not much at all. So those are the things to look out for when going shopping for fabric. Cottons will work fine. Just make sure that it isn't flimsy, see-through, things like that. You also need elastic And this elastic is, let's just get a measurement on it. It's about 1/2 inch wide or 1 centimeter. So it's 1 centimeter or 1/2 inch wide. So that's, you'll need some elastic, and you'll need pins as well, sewing pins as well, just to help getting everything into place before going to the sewing machine. Now for this pattern, you'll need to know how to use a sewing machine, and I prefer doing it by machine rather than hand stitching. So yes, that's basically everything that you'll need for this pattern. Now when it comes to the sizes, you will follow the size that you're making. You'll see that I've got everything listed, all the sizes listed. So let's say you are looking to make it for a size medium. So you'll follow the bust sizes for a medium and the hip size for a medium. If you choose to take your own measurements, by all means, and you know how to do that, by all means go ahead. You'll need the bust and the hip measurement. And then obviously you'll need the length as well, which those measurements, when it comes to the length, those you'll have to take on your own, and that's really easy. So yeah, let's get on with this tutorial. I'm hoping you enjoy it, and please don't forget to subscribe. Before I get on into the tutorial, I'd like to explain how I go about making this dress. So this dress is worked in a few parts, as you see here, and basically it's just a bunch of rectangles. Okay, so right at the top here, we've got part 1, 2, 3, and 4. Part 1 is the crochet part, and I've already worked this part here. So this is the body of the dress, and we work from bottom up. So we're working from the waist right at the bottom here. We'll work our way up to the underarm. So when you fit on this piece, it measures from the underarm going down to the waist, and that's where it stops. Now you will be working according to the size that you wish to make this for, and I've provided all the measurements. So that's part 1, which is the crochet part. Then it's part 2, 3, and 4, which is the fabric part of this dress. So part 2 is let's call this the upper skirt. It's from the waist. So if you look at the length of this, it's from the waist to just above the knee. And this measurement you will have to take for yourself. So you take the measurement from the waist to just above the knee. And then the width of this piece is the hip measurement plus 1/4 of that hip. So for the size that I'm working a small. So that measurement, that hip measurement for a size small is 36 inches. And 1/4 of 36 inches is 9 inches. So if I take the 36 plus 9 gives me 45 inches. And that will be the width of this piece, the knee. So my piece measured 45 inches in width. And for this measurement, I got 22 inches. So it's 45 inches and 22 inches in length. Then we have part 3, which is the lower part of this dress. So for this measurement, the width is the same using the hip measurement plus half. So it's half this time. So again, the hip measurement for the size that I'm making is 36 inches. And then half of that 36 inches is 18 inches. And that gave me 54 inches. And for the length, it's from just above the knee, from where you had stopped at that measurement, to whatever the required length may be. So I'm going with 10 inches for the length here. So on this piece of fabric, I have 54 inches by 10 inches. Now you can go ahead and cut off your fabric pieces as need be. It all depends on the size that you're making. You will calculate the width of your piece like how I've done here, and then you've got to see to the length by physically taking that measurement. And then we have the strap, which is the last part to this dress. Now for this, you'll need 4 of these straps. So I've given a width here of 5 inches. So on this way, well, this becomes my width. So that's 5 inches, and this is now my length. So that the length will be the required length. So you can make the straps as long or as short as you'd like it to be. Okay, so just remember that the width is 5 inches. Now you need to add on seam allowance for these 2 pieces here. Your seam allowance is 1,5 centimeters or 3¼ inches. So so with the measuring tape, you look at it. So it's 1½ centimeters here. So there's 1½ centimeters, or just under an inch for the seam allowance. But like, the seam allowance is something that you can totally decide on. If you want to go add more onto the seam allowance, by all means do so. You can make it 2 centimeters, or you can make it just straight up an inch. It's up to you. But I have added 1½ centimeters or 3/4 of an inch. So once you get your measurement here, that 45 inches, you'll need to then go on and add. So it will be 45 and a 3/4 inch, or it will be, well, for the length, you can leave this length the same as you wish. So for these 2 parts, you do need seam allowance. For the straps, I've already included the seam allowance. So I need you to know that this pattern is completely adjustable. If you choose to have more gathers along this top edge here, by all means, you can go ahead and increase on the width of your fabric. So I worked on a hip plus 1/4. You maybe can work on a hip plus 1/2. That's if you want more gathers along this top edge. If you want more gathers along this bottom edge here, you'll increase here, you'll increase the width. I worked on a hip plus 1/2, so you can go ahead and maybe work on double the hip for more gathers. It's all up to you. The straps as well, they can be adjusted to the width that you'd like it. Well, I worked on 5 inches. If you'd like it narrower, you could work on 4 or 3 inches. It's all up to you. It's preferable to go ahead and cut all your lengths of fabric before beginning the stitching part, because that goes by rather quickly. Let's get on with this tutorial. So we're working part 1 of this dress, which is the crochet part. And for this, you'll need to know the bust measurement. Now for the size that I'm working, the bust for a size small is 34 inches or 86 centimeters. So you can go ahead and check out your measurements for the size that you're working. We'll begin with a slip knot. So for round 1, we're working a foundation double crochet. So this is the foundation chain and the double crochets all in one. It's basically the chain, that starting chain and round one, all as round one. So you'll chain 4, you form that slip knot, chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yarn over into that first chain that we worked, insert the hook, pull up a loop. Yarn over and go through 1 loop on the hook. Now this little chain that we formed here is where we'll start off our next stitch from. So you can just keep that in mind. You will not go back into the starting chain, that very first chain. We're looking to start our next stitch into this stitch here, this chain here. So then for our first stitch, it's yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook. And including that chain 4, the 3 chains from the chain 4, we have 1 stitch, and here's our next. So again, it's yarn over and back into that first chain that we worked. Remember, here it is. And you'll go through both the loops on that chain. Yarn over, pull up a loop. Then again, yarn over, go through 1 loop on the hook. And here, this little chain that we formed will become the start of our next stitch. So I always sort of place my finger on that chain so that I don't forget. So I'll do that. Then it's yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook again, and we've formed our next stitch here. So it's yarn over, and here I go into that first chain that I had worked, picking up both the loops. Then it's pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 1 loop on the hook, and here I form that next starting chain for my next stitch. Then it's yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through that first chain, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 1 loop on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook. And here you can see that I've worked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 double crochets. Now you'll continue working this round 1 until the length of this entire round 1 measures the bust measurement. Now I've continued on working round 1, and here it is. So the entire length of round 1 measures the bust measurement. So for me, that measurement was 34 inches as I'm working a size small. Here you see it. So you work round 1 until this entire length measures the bust measurement for the size that you're working. Please note that the body of this dress, this crochet part that we're working here, is really tight fitting. So if you're looking for a loose fit on the body of this dress, you can go ahead and add on a further 2 inches to this foundation chain. Now that we've completed round 1, you can go ahead and count the number of stitches all across. So your stitch count must be in multiples of 2 or be an even number. So I have 127 stitches. So in order to bring it to that multiple of 2 or make it an even number, I'll open up on 1 stitch. So now I have 126 stitches, and that helps me with my stitch pattern in the next round. So now that our stitch count is correct and it's an even number, we can go ahead and join the start to the end. So we'll join this entire round 1 to form a ring. Now here I am, and I've make sure that when you're setting this chain, that the entire chain is not twisted before joining. So into that 4th chain, that the chain that we had started off with. So 1, 2, 3, 4, insert your hook into that chain. Then it's yarn over, go through both the loops on the hook, and we've slip stitched. Round 2, chain 1 and turn. You will turn after every round. Into that same stitch from where chain 1 comes out of, single crochet. So it's insert your hook into that same stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook. Then it's chain 1, skip the next stitch, single crochet into the next stitch. So insert your hook into that stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook. So our stitch pattern is chain 1, skip 1 stitch, and single crochet into the next stitch. Chain 1, skip a stitch, single crochet. Chain 1, skip 1, single crochet. You'll continue with this stitch pattern to the end of the round. I've continued on working round 2. Here I am right at the end. I have 1 stitch to go. I've chained 1. I'll skip that last stitch into my first stitch right at the start. I'll slip stitch to join. So I've inserted my hook into that stitch. I'll pull up a loop, and then I'll take that same loop that's on the hook, the first loop, and I'll pull it through the second, and that's a slip stitch. Round 3, chain 1 and turn. Into that same stitch from where the chain 1 comes out of, single crochet. Then you'll skip the next stitch. That was the stitch that we had previously skipped in the round before, and we've got a chain 1 above it. So at all times you'll be working your stitches. Where there's skip stitch and a chain 1 is where you work a skip stitch and a chain 1 in the next round. And where there's a single crochet, you'll work a single crochet. So you'll chain 1, skip that chain 1 space into the single crochet from the round before, work a single crochet. Then it's chain 1, skip 1, which is that chain space, and a single crochet into the stitch from the round before. Chain 1, skip 1, single crochet. So you continue with the stitch pattern to the end of the round. I've continued on repeating round 2, and I've repeated round 2 many times. At this point, the piece, when fitted, it fits over the bust and reaches the waist. So it's from the underarm to the waist. And if I measure it at this point, my piece measures around 8.5 inches or 21 centimeters. So once you've worked your piece and it fits from the underarm down to the waist, you'll work the last round. For the last round, continuing on, it's chain 2. Here we're working double crochets into all stitches throughout the round. So you're working your double crochets into the chain 1 spaces and the single crochets. So like here I have a single crochet, and I'll work a double crochet into that stitch, and then my next stitch was a chain 1, so into that chain 1 space I'll work my double crochet. Here's a single crochet from the round before, and I'll work a double crochet, and into that chain 1 space I'll work a double crochet. Continue on with double crochets to the end of the round. I've worked my way to the end of the last round. Here I am to complete the round into that second chain. From chain 2, slip stitch to join. You can now fasten off. And there you have it. This is the body of our dress. Now on the back end of this piece, when we had started off, there was that little notch that formed. So you can go ahead using your yarn needle and the tail end of yarn. You can stitch up on that notch to close. You will need elastic for the skirt part of this dress, but the length of elastic you'll only cut once you've done with your crochet piece. So let me show you how to go about cutting this. So once you're done with this piece, you will measure along the bottom end from there, from side to side. So that was 1 measurement, and then I'll measure again. So that's twice. So basically it's twice this size of the bottom. So here goes. You can cut off a length. Now when I fold this in half, it should fit under this body. So you, like I said, you'll only cut this once you've done with your crochet body. So we've got that crochet body of this dress all done. We're moving on to the second part of our pattern, which was this part here that I had explained. So I've already got my length of fabric cut, and remember I told you it was the hip plus 1/4 for the width of the fabric, and for the length it was from the waist to just above the knee. Here's my fabric all ready to go. So what we're doing here is we're going to stitch along the length of the fabric. So I'm bringing both sides of the fabric together, and this is the length, and I'll stitch both sides together along the length of the fabric. I've completed stitching along the length of part 2 of the upper skirt. So here you see it. So I brought both the sides together and I stitched along the length. I also went ahead and overlocked the edges to neaten. On the other side, so along the width of this piece, the top edge is where, now at this point I need the elastic. I'll take my elastic, and on the wrong side is I'll go ahead and pin this elastic into place. So all along. So as I'm pinning, I'll pull the elastic and then I'll pin. So this is just meant to be a guide as you stitch the elastic to the fabric. Make certain that once you get to the halfway point here on your elastic, this halfway point must meet the halfway point on your fabric, and then you'll turn it around at that halfway point and you'll stretch to get to the end. So you'll work your way all along the fabric in this manner. If you're comfortable just going straight ahead and stitching the elastic to the fabric, you can go ahead and do that. It's just I've got to show this for any beginners out there who may find it difficult. So when you're stitching it, you will pull as you stitch, and this is just, the pins are just meant to be a guide. I'm done with the stitching along this top edge, so I've stitched the elastic to the fabric all around. Now this will ensure that this remains stretchy and is able to fit over the body. Now we'll take our piece, our crochet body, and we'll stitch this end onto that end here, like so. So with using your sewing machine, you can go ahead and pin this all around here, and we'll run the machine right here. So try not to run the machine right along these stitches here. We will be using these stitches to edge along these sides here. So you'll just stitch further up along this row of double crochets that we had worked. Here it is, pinned and ready for stitching. You can see that I've placed pins all around just to help me line up the two pieces. I've gone ahead and stitched the crochet part of the dress to the second part of the dress. So here it is stitched. Now for the third part of this dress, I've taken that length of fabric, and along that length I joined both sides and I stitched. And here you can see I've overlocked as well to neaten the edges. Now on that top edge, I've overlocked as well to neaten the edges. And then I went ahead and set my sewing machine to the largest or biggest or loosest stitch that's available on the machine. And I ran 2 rows of stitches all around this top edge. So here you can see it running all the way around. So the thing to note here is that I didn't secure my ends when I started these rounds. So right at the start here, I did not secure the end, and right at the end, I did not secure it as well. So what we're going to do here, unlike the second part of the skirt where we attached elastic to the top edge, for this edge we'll be forming gathers. Now to form those gathers, we'll use these 2 rows of stitches that we've worked across this top edge, and you can go ahead and take that ends of the thread and you pull on it to form gathers. So that's what happens when you pull on those strands. So you form gathers all the way across this top edge. And as you're working, try to space the gathers out. Now I've gone ahead and gathered along this top edge of part 3, and I know that it's right when I see that this top edge of part 3 is in line with the bottom edge of part 2 here, so they meet up. Now we'll pin these two part 2 to part 3, and then we'll have it stitched all around. So to pin, you need your part 2, which was already sewn to the body. You'll need that right side facing up. Here's the right side and here's the wrong side. So it's right side facing up. And on this piece, you'll need it wrong side facing up. Here it is. This is the wrong side and it faces up. So what I'm going to do is I need to get these two edges, the center back in line. So here you see it. The center back in line, and I'll pin that in place. So I'll continue pinning my piece all the way around. Now at some point you'll find that you need to get this through. So bring my piece in, so, and here's this edges that can be joined all the way around. So continue pinning. And you'll pin all the way around, and then you'll stitch as well. I've gone ahead and stitched together part 3 to part 2. Here you see it. Now we'll work on the straps. So I've gone ahead and cut out those lengths of fabric. So you'll take your fabric, your length of fabric, and I've cut up 4 of them. You'll take your length of fabric, fold it in half along the length, and here you'll stitch across all the way across this edge along the length. I've gone ahead and stitched along the lengths of these straps, so you can go and turn them right way around. Now if you've got a tool that does this, by all means go ahead and use it. I've got one, but I just can't seem to find it, so I'm just doing it the old-fashioned way. Luckily, these straps are wide enough to do this. Okay, so once you've got it the right way around, you can go ahead and neaten up on these edges by folding them inwards and stitching along those top edges. Like I've done here. I've gone ahead, I fitted on those straps here. Now you'll see that I did leave a space on the ends before fitting on those straps. So all I did was I stitched them into place. And so here's one strap, and then here's the next one, and here's one and the other. So there's 4 straps here. Okay, and at the bottom, right at the bottom, I went ahead and neatened that hem off, overlocked, and I stitched along to neaten it up. So now it's just the finishing touches. Now for the edging that you see in between part 2 and part 3, what I've done here is I've worked a band. So in the same way that I worked our foundation double crochet, round 1. So I worked that round 1 again, and I worked it to fit all the way around this join between part 2 and part 3, and then I stitched it into place. So it was just 1 stitch running along here. And I did that by sewing machine. I've already gone ahead and worked an edging along this top edge, and I've done the same right here. I will show you at this point how to work the edging. Attach yarn to center back. Chain 1 and single crochet into that same stitch as chain 1. So here into that same stitch, single crochet. Then it's chain 2, 1, 2, and into that same stitch from where we've single crocheted and chain 2, we will single crochet again. Into the next stitch, we'll single crochet. Then it's chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Into that same stitch from where we've single crocheted and chained 4, we'll single crochet again. Into the next stitch, single crochet. Then chain 2, 1, 2. Into that same stitch, we'll single crochet. Then it's skip 2 stitches, 1, 2, into that next stitch, single crochet. Skip 2 stitches, 1, 2, into the next stitch, single crochet. Then it's chain 2, 1, 2, into that same stitch, single crochet. Into the next stitch, single crochet. Chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Into the same stitch, single crochet. Into the next stitch, single crochet. Chain 2, 1, 2. Into that same stitch, single crochet. So the stitch pattern is skip 2 stitches, 1, 2, single crochet, skip 2, 1, 2. Here in this stitch we'll work a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, all into the 1 stitch. Into the next stitch we'll work a single crochet, chain 4, single crochet, all into the 1 stitch. Into the next stitch we'll work a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, all into 1 stitch. So you have this forming. So it's skip 2, 1, 2, single crochet, skip 2, 1, 2, and thereafter you'll work the stitch pattern, which is single crochet, chain 2, single crochet all into one stitch, into the next stitch, single crochet, chain 4, single crochet all into one stitch, into the next stitch, single crochet, chain 2, single crochet all into one stitch, and you continue on with that stitch pattern to the end of the round. I've worked my way to the end of this round for the edging. Now as I got to the end, I realized that I didn't have as many stitches in order to work the stitch pattern. So what I did was, as I got closer to the end, instead of skipping 2 stitches, I skipped 1, and then I managed to work my pattern, and here I am right at the end. So I just improvised in order to fit the stitch pattern in. So once you get to the end, and I've single crocheted, and you'll skip 1 or 2 stitches depending on how many you've got available. Right at the bottom from where we had started, that's where we will slip stitch. So right here, again, slip stitch to join. And go ahead and cut off this excess yarn and fasten off, and here it is. So all that's left to do now is to weave in all these ends. So to weave in the ends, you'll get your yarn needle and thread it into these ends, or rather thread the ends into the yarn needle. And here we just, on the wrong side, we'll just take those ends and weave it into the wrong side, just back and forth, just to lose those ends. Last bit, you can trim it off. So you do that with all the ends, and that's it. You're done with your crochet mashup dress. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial.